So, you're an inventor. You've poured years of hard work, creativity, and probably a good bit of money into your idea. And then it happens. Your patent gets granted. It feels like you've crossed the finish line, right? The culmination of everything. But is that really the end of the story?
Okay, so you've got that official, fancy document from the US Patent and Trademark Office. You've celebrated, maybe you've even framed it and hung it on the wall. But what happens the next day? What does owning this patent actually mean for you tomorrow, next year, or even a decade from now?
The thing is, that newly granted patent isn't a conclusion at all. It's the start of a whole new journey, one that's filled with surprising costs, really critical decisions, and a ton of unexpected challenges. The real life of a patent, well, it begins the moment after it's granted.
I love this quote from a major Berkeley study on this topic. It just nails it. A patent is not unlike an expensive lottery ticket. Think about that. Getting a patent isn't a guarantee of anything. It's like you bought a very expensive ticket to a lottery. You've paid the price to get in the game, but the big payoff? That's far from a sure thing. And this really sets the stage for our first reality check.
That's right. The second your patent is granted, a clock starts ticking. And that clock is attached to a meter that is constantly charging you money just for the privilege of keeping your invention protected. To keep a U.S. patent alive, the USPTO requires you to pay what they call maintenance fees at 3 very specific times. The first bill shows up at the 3.5-year mark, then you get another one at 7.5 years, and a final one hits at 11.5 years. And here's the kicker. If you miss a payment, poof, your patent protection just expires.
And listen, we are not talking about small change here. Just look at this number. That single fee due at the 11.5-year mark is $3,800. So this forces every patent owner to ask a very serious question at each deadline. Is this invention still valuable enough to justify paying to protect it?
And that question of value, that is it worth it calculation, it leads to some truly astonishing behavior by the people who own these patents. It just seems totally counterintuitive, right? I mean, you went through all the trouble and all the expense to get the patent in the first place. Why in the world would you just let it go? You'd assume the value is a given. Well, the data tells a very, very different story.
53.71%. Just let that number sink in for a moment. It's a huge figure, and it represents a fundamental truth about the patent system that most people never, ever see.
So what is that number? It's the percentage of patents that are effectively abandoned by their owners. More than half of all patents that are issued are just allowed to expire because the patent holder decides it's not worth paying to maintain them anymore. For all intents and purposes, the cost of protection has simply outweighed the value they see in it.
So, what separates the survivors from the ones that get abandoned? That same Berkeley study found some pretty clear patterns. On one side, you have the valuable patents that get maintained. They tend to have more claims, they get cited more often by other patents, they're part of a bigger family of related applications, and they usually have more inventors. On the other side, the abandoned or worthless patents, they consistently have fewer of all those things. So a pretty clear picture starts to emerge. Value seems to be tied to complexity, how foundational the idea is, and a bigger strategic investment.
But hey, let's say your patent is in the valuable half. You've paid your fees, you believe in your invention, and you're ready to defend it. You might think you have this impenetrable fortress built around your idea, but even the strongest fortresses has weaknesses that can be exploited.
And one of the most powerful ways to attack that fortress is something called an inter partes review, or IPR. It's a formal legal process that allows a competitor to march up to the patent office and challenge your patent, arguing it should never have been granted in the first place. They usually do this by presenting prior art, which is just evidence that your new invention wasn't really all that new when you filed for it.
The process itself is straightforward, but it is potent. First, a challenger files a petition. Then an expert panel at the Patent Office, the Patent Trial and Appeal Board, or PTAB, decides if the challenge has merit. If they think there's a reasonable likelihood it could succeed, they agree to hear the case, and then issue a final, binding decision, usually within a year. It's a faster and often cheaper way to try and invalidate a competitor's patent without a full-blown multi-million-dollar court case.
So a patent isn't just vulnerable to being invalidated. If you're the one being accused of infringing someone else's patent, you've got an arsenal of your own. You are not without options.
See, a patent isn't a silver bullet.
An accused infringer has several ways to defend themselves. They can argue the patent is invalid, that the patent office made a mistake. They might claim to be an innocent infringer who didn't even know the patent existed. They could also argue their work was purely for experimental research, not for profit. And here's a big one. They can prove they were already using the invention long before the patent was ever filed. Any one of these can be a powerful defense.
Okay, so when you factor in the ongoing costs, the incredibly high rate of abandonment, and the constant threat of legal challenges, a brand new, much more realistic picture of what a patent is starts to emerge.
A patent isn't some trophy you put up on a shelf to admire. It's a dynamic, strategic tool. Its real power isn't in the document itself, but in the owner's constant commitment to pay for it, to use it, and to defend it. Without that active investment, its value can diminish fast.
And that leaves us with a final fascinating question. If the majority of patented inventions are ultimately decided to be not valuable enough to even maintain, what does that really say about the nature of innovation itself? It suggests that while the act of inventing might be common, creating something that is truly valuable and truly defensible, well, that's incredibly rare. The patent isn't the finish line. It's the starting gun for a long marathon of strategy, investment, and defense.